Hey everyone, I am Ashley Banfield, bringing you this investigative update. Welcome to the Northern Outpost in Canada. We have massive updates from the Bahamas. Today, I have some incredible footage to show you. Exclusive coverage. Unbelievable access to the grueling work being done by the United States Coast Guard. Their investigative service, working alongside the Bahamian Police and the Bahamian Defense Force. The effort they are putting in is incredible. Everything from tearing open old abandoned barges to get their underwater drones inside, to divers plunging into the depths, targeting precise GPS coordinates pulled from Brian's own devices, whether it was his phone or his smartwatch, placing him in spots he swore he never visited, all while spinning that massive lie about drifting across the Sea of Abaco. Supposedly separated from his wife in a tragic accident where she fell from their dinghy. Complete lies. The weather out there was actually beautiful. No rough 2 to 4 foot waves and absolutely no 20-knot winds. But because his cover story sent everyone on a wild goose chase, the Coast Guard is tracking down the truth today. Let me share one incredibly smart move they are making right now. It strongly suggests to me that prosecutors might be building a criminal case by carefully retracing his exact route. In fact, we could see them. I have eyes and ears all over the Sea of Abaco. People on the water, locals on land, and active listeners who reached out to this show. Thank you so much. You have all done an incredible job helping us, especially today. Marina, you know who you are. Thank you for your incredible help. I also want to send a huge shout-out to Captain Dennis Lavari. You did stellar work for us today. And Nathan, as always, your effort was absolutely perfect. Even Captain Ronnie has been keeping a close watch for us. We actually spotted the Coast Guard out there, in their rigid inflatable boat. They call it an over-the-horizon vessel. It is the bright orange craft that shuttles to the massive Coast Guard cutter anchored far out in the deep Atlantic. And then this inflatable boat slides right into the shallow waters to transport the team. They had plenty of backup. They received crucial support from the Royal Bahamas Police Force and Defense Force, who launched their own fast patrol boats to help. They are now exclusively ferrying the Coast Guard investigators to key search sites. It looks like they are cooperating much more than anyone originally anticipated. We watched those vessels arrive on the scene earlier today. We actually spotted them. One was put in the water yesterday, and then the Abaco Inn became a busy hub for all these vessels. In just a moment, I will reveal a major development that unfolded at the Abaco Inn today. You likely remember the Abaco Inn. It is ground zero for this mystery, where Lynette and Brian shared drinks from 4:30 to 7:30. That is where the final photo of Lynette was taken, which we shared exclusively. It clearly shows her wearing that pink Apple Watch, which was later recovered on their sailboat, Soulmate. Which means she never fell from that dinghy, because there is no way her watch magically returned to their sailboat. That is ridiculous. Either way, what we witnessed on the water looked like the Coast Guard actively charting and filming the precise maritime route that Brian actually took during his journey. That data is going to be crucial for the active investigation. And ultimately, for a jury in court. Brian has not been charged yet, though that could change very soon. If I were a betting man, I would say charges are coming, but he faces nothing today. He even claimed only a higher power could drag him away from his search. Yet, that higher power turned out to be a plane ride just hours later. So, apparently, his higher power is commercial flights, like American Airlines. Whichever airline he used to flee, abandoning everyone and completely ghosting his own family, including his daughter, Carly Ellsworth. The girl he raised since age 3. He just vanished completely from her life. If he is really suffering from this trauma, Brian Hooker, wouldn't you want to be supporting your daughter and the mother-in-law you also abandoned? Honestly, we have to add another name to this list of grieving people. While the public is hooked on every single update, actual people are out there truly suffering. Lynette's family.
There is her mother, Darlene, and her young daughter, Carly.
And then there is Lynette's father, Dan, who joins this agonizing list of relatives waiting for answers about what happened to their loved one, while the rest of us watch and wait for the next break in the case. They simply need to know where she is. They desperately want her home, and the Coast Guard is working tirelessly to make that happen, aiming to bring Lynette back to her loved ones while building a definitive, airtight case against Brian Hooker. Time is running out, Brian Hooker. On that note, you might have heard whispers or internet rumors claiming Brian Hooker fled the country and is currently on the run. That is not necessarily accurate. Police do not believe that rumor. Make no mistake, he is suspect number 1. This is an active homicide investigation now. From the very beginning, investigators have kept close watch, maintaining a clear idea of Brian's exact location. Still, this specific rumor has spread like wildfire. Let us clear that up right now. Law enforcement is not worried about him escaping. That does not align with their current intelligence. In our previous episode, you can watch my sit-down interview with Carly. Yesterday was an incredibly heavy day for her. A highly emotional day for Darlene, too. This was the moment reinforcements finally started arriving. The Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell docked yesterday with a dedicated crew of around 24 personnel on board, along with a massive search and rescue team of at least 12 additional specialists, including the recovery dive team, federal investigators, and specialized Coast Guard agents, plus the Broward County search dog Maggie, accompanied by her handler Chris, on loan for the operation. A massive thanks to Broward County. This entire team hit the ground running immediately. Having sailed straight from Florida on that massive cutter, they entered the Sea of Abaco at approximately 2:33 in the afternoon. And just like that, without even dropping anchor, they got straight to work. They immediately deployed their search boat and sent the crews out. 2 separate teams deployed. One dive team using sonar and a remotely operated vehicle, and another sending down active divers. Today, we're taking you underwater with actual divers as they plunge in to search the depths. Meanwhile, we've got the search team working on land. Leading them is Maggie, Broward County's skilled cadaver dog. Alongside her is Chris, her handler, and a team of agents deployed to multiple critical search zones today. As dawn broke today, the investigators started scanning Serenity, located just south of the White Sound Channel. You may recall from some of our very first reports back in week 2. During our time in the Bahamas, Lindsay and I were out on the water with Captain Ronnie, who mapped out that entire area near Serenity, right between the White Sound Channel and the Burl Ives estate. Yes, Burl Ives. For anyone who remembers that era, you'll know him as the voice behind Frosty the Snowman and the mastermind behind those classic Christmas specials we all grew up watching. Regardless, Serenity sits right between his old estate and the White Sound Channel, and that's exactly where teams were searching today. I vividly remember when we gave some Coast Guard investigators a ride, and they were incredibly focused on searching the thick mangroves in that specific area. It's highly likely they are sweeping those same tangled mangroves once again today. Our footage from about 6 weeks back gives you a clear visual of the exact territory they were combing earlier this morning. But the search is also expanding to the rugged west side of Lubers. They hit that area yesterday, and they are back out today, putting boots on the ground with Maggie and extra spotters. Nathan has surveyed this location several times, mapping out these incredibly secluded and isolated stretches of beach. Under the cover of darkness, it's the perfect hidden spot if you want to conceal a crime. Could that be where Brian Hooker went? We can't say for sure. No formal charges have been filed, but this is exactly where the investigation is leading. And here is the kicker. We now know his digital footprint and GPS data placed him right there. Search teams are only deploying now because the hard data finally came in. Search teams are targeting these highly specific coordinates because they are tracking his digital breadcrumbs. The suspect left a trail, fortunately. Just like Brian Kohberger did What is it with these guys named Brian?
Regardless, Brian Hooker left a clear path, and guess what? It completely contradicts the story he told investigators.
His alibi is completely decoupled from what his actual phone data reveals.
That is red flag number 1 in this case.
He is clearly lying, and he is involved in Lynette's disappearance. She didn't just fall overboard while he drifted away. Now they just need to prove it and locate her.
Today, those specialized teams and canine units are thoroughly combing the entire western coastline of Lubbers.
Meanwhile, the eastern side of Marsh Harbor remains a critical area of interest.
Specifically, the same abandoned harbor we showed you yesterday, just north of Witch Point. And believe me, when I say abandoned, I mean it.
Look, the area is littered with decaying barges and shipwrecks featuring concrete hatches and narrow square openings that lead down into the dark. I certainly wouldn't want to squeeze through those tight spaces and plunge into the murky waters below.
God knows what might be lurking down there.
But these professionals are fearless. These Coast Guard divers are incredibly brave, systematically checking every single dark opening and the deep water beneath.
These barges have been rotting out here for years. Now, investigators aren't just searching the decks, they are diving deep into the murky waters surrounding them.
So the divers went under.
And we watched their ROV scouring the seafloor across this entire sector. Their plan is to sweep roughly 5 miles of open ocean. Think about that.
5 miles of deep water. They are combing every inch.
Using divers, sonar, and the ROV, it is a massive operation, but they are absolutely determined to find Lynette.
And not just Lynette. They desperately need to find her dry bag. Where did it go, Brian?
Your story claims she went overboard holding a bag that by design floats. But okay, they are searching frantically for that bag, and they are hunting for the oar. Remember his story.
Oh, no, I was rowing toward her.
But of course, she would be behind you, completely out of your line of sight. Then the pin snapped on the oar, and it drifted away. So he is left with just one. Honestly, as a former Marine, you are telling me you cannot steer an 8-foot dinghy with one oar? I could paddle that with my bare hands. Regardless, that missing oar is key. We initially thought it washed up on Luber's quarters after locals spotted one there.
But that was a dead end. Searchers are still scanning the waters just south of the local boatyard.
Keep in mind, his alibi claims he came ashore 100 yards south, then clawed through the dense brush to find help.
Yet he landed multiple times.
Somehow, without any motor, you managed to make landfall several times at completely different spots along the coast. And one highly specific destination was this derelict, abandoned harbor.
This marks the second day of active searching,
with divers in the water alongside sonar sweeps and ROV deployments. They even brought a tool the locals call a conch hammer. Quite fitting. Normally, you would use this tool to crack open shells for fresh salad or to listen to the ocean. It is designed to smash through the toughest outer layers.
Picture that seam.
But these divers were using a heavy mallet to breach the steel hull of that barge. My guess is they are clearing an entry path for the divers, or perhaps for the ROV. Personally, I would send the drone first. Diving in there looks terrifying. But then again,
elite recovery teams routinely face these extreme hazards, and Coast Guard divers are truly elite.
Still, hearing that heavy hammer echo underwater was a chilling detail. Take a close look at this footage, because investigators just located 2 submerged scuba tanks. That is a massive clue, considering Brian and Lynette were active divers.
We even have clip footage from April 2nd,
where Lynette explains they were sailing up to Great Guana Cay to refill their oxygen tanks.
You can clearly see those 2 tanks sitting in their cart and on board the vessel.
By April 3rd, they were heading toward Elbow Cay to anchor near the Firefly Inn for the night, keeping their boat moored in the bay nearby. Then, on April 4th at 11:30 a.m., they pulled up anchor and relocated down to Aunt Pat's Bay.
That leaves almost no window for any recreational diving.
especially between filling the tanks on April 2nd.
And the afternoon, Lynette vanished, yet 2 tanks were found.
It is highly doubtful those oxygen tanks actually belonged to Brian and Lynette. They looked old, pretty beaten up, like they'd been sitting there abandoned for a long time. Plus, there are already 2 other tanks on board Soulmate.
So I am really curious about the oxygen levels left inside them. But look at these punctures. They are incredible.
One more detail. They are fully loaded with gear, including high-tech drones. In fact, they deployed one of those drones today. I wanted to ensure you did not miss that detail.
They have got the ROV, drones, divers, and vessels, including that massive over-the-horizon boat, a giant Coast Guard cutter, search teams, and Maggie.
Maggie, the highly trained cadaver dog, and her handler, Chris,
are doing absolutely everything they can to locate any sign of Lynette.
Thank goodness for that, because this is proving to be an incredibly grim task.
Here's the thing. It has been over 7 weeks now, and come this Saturday, it will mark 8 full weeks. I am actually recording this on Wednesday, June 3rd. Realistically, it is highly unlikely they will ever find Lynette in the condition we all remember her.
Instead, the team is searching specifically for scattered skeletal remains, along with torn clothing or other small personal items. You have to look at this clinically, because these searchers have highly trained eyes, and they must know exactly what to spot as they run the underwater drones and send their divers down into the depths. But that is the brutal reality of it, especially when you stop to think, because this is a human being who deserves dignity, who deserves to be found and brought home to her family.
But for the recovery teams, the grim truth is they must focus on what is actually down there.
And there is another deeply unsettling detail to consider, which many Bahamians have pointed out to me. Whenever a body, or even a large marine animal, washes up on the coast, they immediately spot vultures. Because of that, they watch for those circling birds. To the locals, that dark silhouette in the sky always means something is lying over there. In fact, one resident we interviewed mentioned seeing a flock of vultures circling this specific part of the harbor, just south of the boatyard, during the days right after Brian Hooker spun his entire cover story. That is just one more crucial clue for the team to factor into their investigation. Along those same lines, we must note that the Coast Guard has already obtained dental records for Lynette. This is a critical identification tool, especially if they recover a jawbone that has detached from the skull, which is common in these waters. Regardless, they successfully secured those records from her family. And of course, you are probably aware that her family also provided DNA samples. Her daughter, her mother, and her father all handed over their DNA swabs to the Coast Guard last week, right before flying to the Bahamas. There could be additional motives behind that, which we will explore in a future episode, but clearly, this genetic data would play a major role in a positive identification. Here is another shocking discovery from today. On May 22nd, some boaters who were navigating near the western side of Lovers, floating in just 4 to 5 feet of water, spotted a piece of clothing matching the exact color Lynette was wearing. Specifically, that distinct aquamarine bathing suit cover-up she had on. They desperately tried to drop anchor and snag the garment. But again, it lay 5 feet down, and the wind was brutal that day. So, retrieving it was simply impossible. Instead, they carefully recorded the exact GPS coordinates of the sighting and immediately forwarded that crucial data to the Coast Guard. But the Coast Guard received those coordinates a week ago, and then took another full week just to reach the location. They finally swept the area, but unfortunately, my sources confirm that piece of clothing is no longer there. It is incredibly frustrating to sit here knowing that potential evidence was spotted right in our primary zone of interest. Right. This is the exact water where Brian's GPS tracks him, just off those isolated beaches along the western shoreline, just south of northern Lovers. Honestly, let me just say this. If you spot anything similar, tell us immediately. Email dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com, our direct tip line. We have local contacts who can quickly notify the Bahamian police for you.
That way, authorities could have responded to the scene immediately.
Remember, the Coast Guard operates at the request of Bahamian authorities.
They can't just drop everything and race over. It requires a coordinated mission, meaning they must secure verified GPS data before launching search boats into the Sea of Abaco.
It is incredibly frustrating this lead fell flat.
Still, we are deeply grateful to those who took the initiative to record those coordinates and report them.
Meanwhile, Bahamian investigators are collaborating closely with the Coast Guard, going far beyond the patrol boats we looked at earlier. Holding a major briefing at the Royal Bahamian Police Headquarters earlier today. Coast Guard investigators were there, briefing top officials at the local police department, then moved directly to the Royal Bahamian Defense Force to coordinate their next moves.
I still don't know where the dinghy is kept.
Whether it is secured at police headquarters or the Defense Force base remains unclear. But wherever it is, that small boat remains absolutely vital to this ongoing investigation. Investigators are desperate to get their hands on it, deploy scent dogs, and examine it closely, right? We can only hope it was secured properly to preserve critical forensic details, DNA, and physical evidence. The search teams were also
Deploying search divers today near the exact spot where the yacht Soulmate was anchored.
I should have anticipated that move, but it caught me off guard.
Think about it. What if a struggle occurred on deck? A local witness reported hearing a massive splash. A resident standing just 100 yards away on the shoreline heard a heavy splash echo across the calm water around 9:30 p.m. Because of that,
It is crucial to uncover what lies hidden beneath the surface near the boat's anchorage.
let us be completely honest here. Lynette did not simply fall out of that dinghy, right? They returned to the yacht. Something terrible happened on board, and now investigators must trace the physical evidence to prove that theory and locate where he hid her body.
Yet, he keeps claiming he only wants to find his missing wife. While he faces no official charges yet, his actions speak louder. He packed up and fled.
He has not shown a shred of concern since.
Not a single phone call checking on the search. No, he just vanished into thin air. Does that honestly sound like a grieving husband who lost his wife?
Think about it. What a fool. If you want us to buy your story, at least stick to it.
You could at least keep up the act, but the moment you hit United States soil, you just shut down.
You hung your entire family out to dry, acting as if Lynette never even existed, like you did not care at all.
So, it is pretty obvious your whole story is a lie. If there was even a shred of truth to it, you would be grieving every single day. You never would have left the Bahamas.
You would have flown Carly and Darlene out there immediately, begging them to help you search. You should have been calling the Bahamian police and Hopetown Fire and Rescue every single day, begging for help.
Tell me how I can help. Tell me what I can do.
What is the update today? Where is my wife?
The woman you claimed only a higher power could make you abandon. So what was that higher power? Turns out, just a simple airplane ride.
So the area around the vessel Soulmate is a critical focus for the Coast Guard dive teams.
We do not know if they deployed divers, used an underwater drone, or searched the depths another way.
But the core plan was to search around the exact spot where the Soulmate was anchored.
And do we know the exact location?
Unfortunately, Brian kept spinning his tales until he finally raised anchor 2 days later and sailed back to Marsh Harbor.
So, investigators are now piecing together her exact position using photos and witness sightings, which should not be too difficult near Aunt Pat's Bay. Between all the video footage, photographs, and other pieces of evidence, and witness statements, the team will know exactly where to search. They want to pinpoint where something valuable might have been thrown overboard from the vessel. This episode is proudly brought to you by Wild Grain. If you absolutely love fresh warm bread, but lack the time to run to a local bakery, This is honestly the most convenient food subscription out there.
Wild Grain delivers bake-from-frozen sourdough breads, delicious pastries, and even fresh pasta right to your doorstep.
Every item features clean ingredients you can easily pronounce, making it taste amazing while being much gentler on your stomach.
The best part is, you simply slide it into the oven. No thawing, zero prep work, and in 25 minutes, your home smells like a gourmet bakery.
But do not just take my word for it.
They back it up with 40,000 five-star reviews and the title of Best Food Subscription Box from USA Today 3 years running. For a limited time, Wild Grain is giving you $30 off your first box, plus free croissants for life. Just head to wildgrain.com/Banfield to subscribe.
Get $30 off your very first box and free
Croissants for life at wildgrain.com/Banfield or use promo code Banfield at checkout.
All right. Let us turn now to the east side of Marsh Harbor, where specialist dive teams have been working all day. Yesterday, we watched them deploy the underwater drone. Today, actual divers are descending into the depths. It is fascinating to watch their search. They are freediving without heavy scuba gear, mostly because, to be completely frank, it is incredibly shallow out there. You are looking at maybe 4, 5, 6, or 8 feet of water across most of the Abacos. Closer to the shoreline, it gets even shallower. However, those sunken barges with massive concrete squares cut out of them are a key focus.
It is highly suspicious, honestly. Especially if you had already spotted these structures while paddleboarding around here as a tourist.
You might picture this in the dead of night and think to yourself that this is the perfect spot to hide a body, if you had one. Not saying anyone actually did that, of course.
Brian Hooker faces no charges yet, but watching these divers search this abandoned harbor gives us a fascinating look into their strategy.
Once more, they are freediving with only snorkels and masks.
And as you can see, the weather is far from ideal. Look at those heavy clouds. They turn everything gray.
Sunshine would give them much better underwater visibility. Under these gray skies, you can actually see the raindrops hitting the surface of the water.
Heavy, overcast rain showers have been rolling in all day long.
It simply makes it harder for natural light to penetrate the dark water.
But you have to admire their absolute dedication as they dive in.
Look at this footage. The sheer commitment of this team is truly impressive.
Somewhere around here, maybe 3 miles out, right in this general area.
Take a look.
Honestly, I have to admit, I am completely flying blind while watching this unfold. But our sources and boots on the ground are getting incredibly close in their boats, which helps. But we still do not know their specific target.
Beyond this harbor, we simply do not have their exact GPS coordinates.
I cannot say what exact GPS coordinates the Coast Guard is working with.
But I can certainly show you what our own observers have spotted.
From the shoreline, they have captured footage of the divers walking the beaches. So,
They clearly possess key tracking data that we do not have, precise GPS coordinates leading them directly to these specific search areas.
but imagine doing this in pitch blackness. We see the team wading through the water and navigating the difficult shore,
Stepping across the sand, the sharp coral, and the limestone. But if Brian Hooker was behind this, he did it in pitch black darkness.
Keep in mind, the couple love to explore, meaning Brian likely knew these hidden spots very well from their past trips on a paddleboard. Let me direct your focus to a few tiny details now.
Because sometimes the devil really is in the details. We know Brian Hooker owned a headlamp because he was wearing it in previous photos posted to social media.
I am incredibly curious to know if that headlamp has ever been recovered.
I doubt he would keep it inside the dry bag he had when he was rescued the following morning. I mean, what possible reason would you have for carrying a headlamp when you planned to return in broad daylight? No one brings a headlamp on a daytime trip unless they specifically planned on staying out past dark.
But we cannot know for sure. Nobody searched his gear back then. because he was treated as a victim.
He was just a lying victim who claimed his wife fell overboard in a tragic accident.
Surely, he would not be foolish enough to keep that headlamp on him if they did search his bag.
Or would he? We cannot say for sure, but we absolutely know he owned one.
Day 2 of crossing the Gulf of Mexico. We are sailing right across.
And Brian located the speaker. I will handle the foghorn.
By the way, let us revisit this video. We saw those scuba tanks earlier, but the real star here is Maggie.
Here is Maggie arriving, Broward County's incredible cadaver dog.
I absolutely adore her.
That is the very tracking dog Lindsay and I spotted down in the Bahamas about 7 weeks ago.
But she is busy working with Chris, her handler, sweeping these beaches, scanning every inch, waiting for her to alert on something.
Keep in mind, this is far from easy work. It is the Bahamas, which means it is constantly hot, wet, and heavy.
It is stiflingly humid on a good day, but today they are dealing with heavy rain. Needless to say, it is pretty miserable work.
Especially in that heavy gear, you have to suit up for some seriously punishing terrain.
When they are pushing through dense mangroves and razor-sharp thickets, they have to dress for survival, not a tropical getaway.
Just take a look at this terrain. It is incredibly swampy, thick, and choked with deep mud.
You can see one of the investigators struggling to navigate around these deep, mucky bogs.
But that thick muck might hold the key if a suspect was tramping through these bogs.
That evidence inevitably clings to things. It leaves traces on their clothes or deep in their shoes.
And so I can only hope that if Brian Hucker,
and remember, he has not been charged, but if he did harm Lynette and was moving through these muddy areas, I can only hope he was careless enough to leave his shoes uncleaned. And I truly hope those shoes were still on board the vessel, Soulmate.
when investigators boarded and thoroughly processed every single inch of it for forensic evidence.
In many investigations, a massive cornerstone of the prosecution's whole case
Comes down to soil on tires or residue on shoes, because not all dirt is the same.
Forensic soil samples from one specific location can vary drastically from a spot just yards away.
The grit and sediment from a remote island shore or a sandy beach will not match the unique composition of the Abaco Inn. So, it will be a crucial piece of the puzzle if forensics recovered soil from this specific spot on the shoes Brian wore that night. Now, look at these haunting shots of the desolate area just south of the boatyard.
This decaying, forgotten marina. You can instantly feel how completely isolated and eerie it is.
Whether this decay is from decades of neglect or the wrath of Hurricane Dorian,
Locals tell me this was once a quiet harbor where old working vessels would slip in and out.
nobody comes here anymore. These rotting barges are completely ruined, left to rust in the shallow water.
These capsized, listing boats are completely wrecked, but they would make a highly effective hidden spot to conceal a body if that was the plan. So, why did Brian's GPS place him right here?
This is a deeply unsettling place to navigate in the dead of night.
If your tracking coordinates show you down here, you are not wandering around looking for help. Because there are absolutely no lights. The town's lights were all in the opposite direction.
The illumination from the boatyard lay entirely north of the spot where Brian claimed he washed ashore.
There was absolutely no logical reason to be down here, especially given his official story. So if you want to slice straight through here, lift it up. You are clear. The heat is rising, and there is debris directly ahead. Steer clear of that then. Push straight ahead. You can ease in here.
Copy. You are clear. Watch the rock here.
Take a close look inside. There is wreckage piled against it, but you should be fine if you nose in slowly.
I mean, it is sitting right against the edge.
There is a piling right there, but you are clear. I mistook it for a dry bag, but he claims they are actually talking about a piling. It is just a pile. Wait, is that a scuba tank right there?
Do you want to find out what it is?
Honestly, it really does look like one.
There seems to be another flat object on the floor, some kind of silver tank.
It looks like there is some paint on it.
Do you want me to go bram it? I want to show you the heavy activity unfolding today in the White Sound Channel near the Abaco Inn. Now I have brought you to this spot before. Those docks on the left are where Brian and Lynette Hooker last tied up their dinghy.
And Lindsay and I actually moored on that very same dock to the left.
You can clearly see the road where that golf cart just passed by. That is the exact path Brian walked, appearing ready to cross and head straight down to the water.
Today, it serves as a staging area for the Coast Guard in that orange, rigid, inflatable boat.
Alongside them, the Royal Bahamas Police Force is on scene, backed by the Royal Bahamian Defense Force vessels. We are also seeing several other vessels in the mix, all coordinating and ferrying back and forth from key spots in the White Sound Channel, which cuts directly in and stops right at the Abaco Inn. This very dock is where we first encountered the Coast Guard investigators, who were sent to handle this unfolding mystery a week after it started. Our meeting took place right here on this wooden dock. They were actually waiting for a ride from the Royal Bahamian Police, and they stood there waiting for quite some time. They had Maggie the dog with them, so we approached and casually said, "Hello, how are you?" We asked what they were up to, but they remained tight-lipped, which makes complete sense. Still, when you show up with a Broward County search dog, you cannot really hide your mission. But anyway,
It is fascinating to watch them trace the exact same route that Brian and Lynette would have taken when they departed from the Abaco Inn.
I want to focus on why the Abaco Inn is central to this mystery. It is not just a convenient staging ground, but they held a massive briefing there today. Almost every single investigator tied to this active case was present, from the Royal Bahamian Police Force to the Royal Bahamian Defense Force, which is spelled with an F, by the way, along with the Coast Guard and the Coast Guard Investigative Service, all gathering inside the Abaco Inn for this major summit. We immediately wondered, what is going on? This has to be massive. In reality, they were likely coordinating vessels, captains,
And mapping search grids, but it was a massive operation. Afterwards, they scattered back across the Sea of Abaco to their designated search grids.
one of the key spots the agents visited this afternoon is a critical piece of the puzzle and one you likely recognize if you are following this mystery. It is the local boatyard. This yard is exactly where we tracked the first known encounter between Brian Hooker and civilization after his grueling 9-hour drift. A watchman at the yard claims that around 3:35 in the morning, he encountered a man looking for help. Now, surveillance footage reveals a highly unusual side of Brian Hooker, behaving in a way that does not match someone lost at sea without any power. He claimed he drifted for 9 hours after losing his wife. But his behavior told a different story, contradicting how he actually carried himself on the surveillance video at the boatyard. Quite the opposite. The security footage captures a man lurking in the shadows, peering behind structures, before muttering a flat, almost silent plea for help. There was no shouting, no panic, none of the terror you would expect from someone who just survived such a traumatic ordeal. And he barely even mentioned his missing wife. Isn't your immediate reaction going to be, "My wife"? My wife is lost. We need to go back out there. But he didn't. That boatyard remains key.
It is exactly where federal investigators went today.
I am trying to uncover their specific evidentiary motives beyond just retracing his steps.
They are tracking Brian Hooker, mapping the moments before he ultimately surfaced there.
Perhaps this boatyard marks the very end of Brian Hooker's path. Either way, that facility is central to today's developments. We know the Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell arrived from Miami, Florida, just yesterday. For some reason, the captain chose to deploy his team north of Man-O-War Cay, that is positioned far north of Elbow Cay. And from there, they used a rigid inflatable boat to transport investigators into the Sea of Abaco and their specific target areas. As the afternoon wore on,
The Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell shifted south, anchoring directly off the shores of Onday Beach.
For context, Onday Beach is a well-known restaurant and resort area situated on the western side of Elbow Cay.
Sitting just down from the Abaco Inn. And that vantage point offers the exact same ocean view Brian was staring at in the final photo taken of Lynette. In that image, his arms are crossed, matching witness descriptions of him brooding and staring out at the ocean.
That is the precise spot his gaze was fixed on.
If he stood there today, he would be looking right at the Coast Guard cutter Margaret Norvell.
A dark irony, given that the Coast Guard is only there because of Brian Hooker's web of lies. So, there it is.
It has been an incredibly active period for the Coast Guard investigators in
Bahamas, working with the Royal Bahamas Defense Force and the Royal Bahamas Police Force.
And it is highly encouraging that they are.
fully cooperating, working hand in hand with the Coast Guard. Personally, I am just hoping and praying to whatever God may be listening.
Regardless of what your personal faith might be.
Let us keep hoping they eventually locate Lynette, right? Let me go on the record. Even if they fail to find her, Brian Hooker is far from cleared.
Not at all. Prosecutors secure convictions without a body all the time.
And Brian's evolving lies are so extensive, it is easy to imagine a jury turning on him.
When it comes to reasonable doubt,
This man is nowhere near reasonable. Regardless, thank you for tuning in today.
Remember to use our tip line, dropdeadseriousinfo@gmail.com.
if you have seen anything, know anything, or possessed any footage, please reach out to us.
Should you prefer to send evidence directly to the Coast Guard, you can forward it to me or submit it to them directly.
They have a downloadable app called CGIS for anonymous tips.
Just send it over to me first, and then I will pass it along to them. If you bypass me, they won't be allowed to share it back. That is just how the system works. Look, we really do not need to drag the press into this.
The priority is getting this evidence to the detectives handling the homicide investigation.
That is the official classification now, a suspected homicide. Appreciate the help, everyone. Never forget, finding the truth is not just critical, it is drop-dead serious.